Grüezi miteinander, ganz herzlich willkommen und einen wunderschönen guten Tag, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde. Ich melde mich zurück mit dem zweiten Teil meines Interviews mit Professor Sergei Karaganow, dem Doyen der russischen Außenpolitik und auch dem Fakultätsvorsteher des außenpolitischen Seminars, könnte man sagen, der HSC, der Higher School of Economics, einer sehr angesehenen Universität here in Moscow. Professor Karaganow, many thanks and welcome back to our conversation. We went into a very dark field the last few minutes, the field of war. Now let's have a look a bit about on the broader world. I mean, you know the West very well. You said that you are, I would say you are a very westernized Russian. You are a cultivated man, of course. I see all your books, the pictures on the wall. Let's talk about the United States of America first. How do you see the United States of America today? How would you characterize this country? What is probably the crucial, the most important thing that you want to point out?
United States, I think the United States is in dire crisis. We all know about that. It is divided, but I think it is still a viable society, and it could resurrect itself and get themselves out of this crisis somehow. All the more that, cleverly enough, while losing the possibility to exploit the world through the system of Bretton Woods plus and dollar, they are now sucking bleeding white Europe. So, I mean, Europe is becoming a milking cow for the United States. So they will survive, hopefully. Of course, there will be all kind of crises. But eventually, 20 years from now, United States would probably become a great overseas power. With global influence, but one of the great powers.
Yeah. How do the Russians, or how do you generally see the United States? I mean, the United States, for us, I'm a Swiss, I studied a little bit in the US, but I lived mainly in Switzerland, in Europe. The United States, in many respects, have always been an inspiration. It has been interesting, the culture, of course, the youth culture. But from a Russian perspective, what do you think, or what would you say are the inspiring things about what has inspired you?
When I was a young person, I was, by the way, trained as an Americanologist. I liked the United States. I still admire the spirit, the old spirit of the United States. Now they're in crisis. Now their moral standards are eroding, and now many of their great ideas which have been driving the United States are eroding. Now the democracy of the United States is in deep crisis. We all know that. But I think that they have still some future. All the more that, but of course they will change very radically from what they used to be. They have changed already. Yeah. Of course, the United States of my youth, when I was an Americanologist, and the United States now is a very different country, and it turned mostly to the worse. But I still believe it has capacity to recuperate.
And what would you say should the United States stand for in the world? What would you expect as a Russian intellectual? What should the United States
I think
embody?
that the United States should, if I were American, I would say, I mean, cut some of the some of the excessive obligations and go back to where you belong.
So America first.
Yes, I think that, and actually they will go in that direction anyway. Of course, now the globalist liberal elites of the United States hate Trump, and Trump is a weird person in many ways, but he's absolutely, he shows absolutely in the right direction for the United States. It's not for Europe or not for European globalist elites, but he is. Trump or post-Trump will be the future of America. They will go into more neo-isolationist mood anyway, because they have overextended themselves, and this overextension this huge extension at one point was very profitable, because they could have exploited or used the world for their benefit. But now, when the foundation of their dominance, and that is military preponderance, had been done away with, their empire becomes a burden. We have had that, I mean, in history, and they're gradually getting back. Of course, it's a very difficult process.
Will Trump make a difference at the end? I mean, there are Russian voices. Also, the Russian president says, well, I don't care who will be the next president. But do you think, will Trump make a difference? Will he change the whole direction of American politics?
Not much, but he has been changing. And by the way, even Biden have been changing. Even Obama started to withdraw. But he was not allowed by his elites. Then, I mean, they revolted against Trump, who decided to make the same movement much more decisively. Then Biden, I mean, was in the middle, and also Biden has all his people had all his idiosyncrasies, but Biden did absolutely the right thing. He cut American involvement in Afghanistan. I mean, which was abysmally stupid. Abysmal. I mean, I remember very well when I was talking to top Americans, and I was asked by leaders of my country to talk to these top Americans at the beginning of the 2000s, and trying to dissuade them from going there. And we couldn't understand why. Should they possibly go went into the with their open eyes into the grave of empires, and they went there.
And Russia has its own experiences too on that field, this graveyard.
We did it. We were stupid enough in '90, but at that time, at least, many in our elites were kind of stupefied by communist dogmas. But after all, what has happened, I mean, going there was absolutely unexplainable. I mean,
so humanity's...
And I remember a very great story when a few senior members of our intelligence came to my office in the Institute of Europe and asked me, could you please explain why did they go? And I said, well, I'm sorry, I said to them, I am not your intelligence officer, I am a scholar. Why? So what is your explanation? They say, we don't know. Maybe they're building a bridgehead to attack Iran. I said, go to the map and see what is between Iran and Afghanistan. How could you possibly do it? Then they said, what? I said, stupidity and arrogance.
Well, let's have a look at Europe. I mean, in Europe, there is a growing discontent among many peoples. You see it also in election results with their elites. Many governments are hanging in the ropes. There is also a widespread criticism about the green political agenda, against wokeism, about the whole direction probably of the European Union and Europe has taken. What would you say? What is the root cause of this development of Europe? What is the core of the problem in Europe?
No, well, they have been building for about 200, 300 years since Enlightenment. Europe has lost its moral cause.
It has lost
its moral core.
Yeah,
that's it.
What do you mean by that? Is that Christianity, or what would you say is the moral core of Europe?
I mean the basic tenets of Christianity. And I must say that as I've said, I was one of the founders of the Institute of Europe, one of the most pure pro-European Russians in the 80s. and I finished my European journey in 2002. When Europeans were debating their new constitution. You remember the Chirac Commission, I think, not Chirac, Giscard d'Estaing Commission, and then they, when they in the draft treaty of their constitution, which never passed, they rejected the notion of Christianity, and I said to myself, oh, that's it. I finished my European journey. Mm-hmm. Of course, I love many places in Europe. I still love, Alice. I lost my Venice flat, and I love Venice is one of the my best loved places in the world. And of course, I love European culture. But Europe has lost its cause because of the moral degradation.
And is it irreversible? I mean, can Europe find a way back to its original values, to the rudiments of its?
I think, well, no. First of all, this has happened to Europe already, the late Roman Empire. And then after several hundred years of dark ages, it recuperated. But it took 700 years. Mm-hmm. I hope that this time it would not be long. It would last that long. Mm-hmm. But it is the same direction, and it is worse than the late empire, because Europe has lost its moral core. It has relaxed itself to the extent that they do not want to work. They don't, not all, but of course, do not want to struggle, not want to fight, and they are run by the elites, which are comprador. Now, modern elites. I'm not, of course, saying that all are comprador, but they are comprador.
Mm-hmm. But one could argue and say, Europe went through crisis every 800 years. Now we are in decline because of overwhelming wealth. Then when you're too rich, you get lazy. But now, under the pressure of reality, Europe will recuperate. Or have you lost any hope?
No, let's put it this way. I do not want to lose any hope, but I think that my advice to my government has been for a couple of decades, forget about Europe. Because for several decades, I hope that Europe would recuperate. Mm-hmm. But it will have to go through a series of crises. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, it will not. This series of crises will not end up in the total collapse of Europe if a war big war breaks out. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, there will be a change of elites. Mm-hmm. But I do not see now. I do not see the sign of the change of elites as of yet. Of course, I mean, there are on the fringes of Europe. I mean, like in Hungary or somewhere else, there are still elements of relatively reasonable and European-oriented elites. Orban is more European than any European politician I know.
Yeah. And will the European Union survive, yes or no?
No.
No.
No, it will survive, of course, for many years. It will go down the drain, and Europe will live through a period of fascism, hopefully not Nazism, because it couldn't afford. But I hope that Europe will recuperate, because it's, in a way, though I am the father of the Russian turn to the east, and I am also Eurasian, and I really have a feeling of being Eurasian, or Russian and Eurasian. And I still believe that Europe does not deserve the fate it is moving to.
But let's not give up hope. But let's
not give up hope.
Yeah,
but you have to explain to that. I mean, Switzerland joining the camp of madmen or men, women, whomever they are.
Well, even Switzerland has lost its head in history several times, but as a Swiss, I can say we always found the way back to our roots, and probably this time too.
Hopefully,
We'll see.
hopefully.
But let's talk about the big enigma for many people in the West. I mean, of course, Russia is the big topic. Everybody talks about President Putin. You have this very negative attitude now towards your country. Let us talk about Russia. Explain Russia. Let's start with the question, what kind of political system actually has Russia? Is it a democracy? Is it an autocracy? Is it a dictatorship? How would you characterize Russian political system?
We have, of course, a mixed system, and it's an autocracy, and I hope we shall have more effective autocracy. Basically, democracy is as a system, as a good weather system, and the democracy is a system by which oligarchies are managing complex societies. Democracies always die under circumstances of pressure. It's a law.
Well, Switzerland would be the exception.
Maybe there are two nations you just jump over. I said there are two nations which I believe could survive. One is the United States because it's born as a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't be anything else. I mean, or else it should. I mean, and the second is interesting is your country because it's also born. I mean, more or less like a democracy. It has no experience of being other than that.
You can argue Switzerland and the United States are like nations built on an idea, on a philosophy, and the philosophy means we govern ourselves. I mean,
absolutely,
that's the central idea.
However, of course,
not the idea of Germany.
You must also remember that Switzerland was born, I mean, out of this quagmire of small statelets because of the goodwill of Alexander I. Who had, if I remember correctly, a teacher,
yes,
Lage.
Mr. Lahab. Sure, Mr. Lahab. We have not forgotten that. I mean,
yes,
neutrality in Vienna was
unbelievable story because I mean, actually, this teacher has been he had been separated from Alexander, but he remembered this good Swiss.
And I think there was also a Swiss woman involved. That's what the legends say. Cherchez la femme. So the Tsar had also a connection to the teacher, but also to a woman. But at the very end, he helped Switzerland establish its neutrality. 1815.
There are many very great romantic stories about that. I love reading about the concert of Vienna, but the woman which was involved there were several, of course. One of them was the princess, the Princess Bagration, the heir to one of the richest family of Russia, married to Prince Bagration.
And the famous general of Russian family.
Yes, and she was absolutely gorgeous beauty, but probably was simultaneously mistress to all.
But let's get back to Russia. Let's get back to Russia.
That is one of the most. I mean,
you have now elegantly avoided the subject. No, let's jump back. I mean, how do you describe the system of Russia today? They say, like in our newspapers, Putin is this total autocrat dictator. Yeah, what did you say about that?
Well, first of all, what is Russia? If you need, Russia is about fighting and about defense. It is their national idea, Russia. That's it. It's not about democracy. It's not about law. It's about fighting and defense.
Survival.
And we are surviving. That's why we are returning back to our roots. Second, we are living through a period of renaissance. One of the interesting reasons for that is that we are at war again. In a way, this war, special military operations, war with the West in Ukraine, have helped us, is helping us to resurrect ourselves morally, economically, politically, etc. As to the system, will be autocracy, of course. And the only, by the way, but of course, the world, except for Switzerland and the partially the United States, will be autocratic. I mean, 30 years from now. Democracy would not survive in this world, where we have all these problems which are hanging over our heads, including the environment, climate change, lack of food, lack of pure water, etc., etc. It is impossible to manage this world by democratic means. Democracy is a good weather system.
Yeah. How is it to be an intellectual, a professor in Russia? I mean, regarding the liberty of your work, the freedom of work you can have. I mean, how do I have to imagine this? For example, if you would start to criticize the government, you would say, President Putin is a horrible president, he made one mistake after the other, it's totally wrong. I would someday enter police guys or men with black clothes and put you out in the morning to
let's put it this way.
you?
I'm wise enough not to criticize our president in name, but he and our authorities know that I am criticizing them very harshly when needed. I know, and I'm very often disagree with my government openly.
But could you work as a scientist? Could you work more freely if you would stay in the United States or in Europe?
Here, now the Europeans and Americans are forbidden to come here, but when 3 or 4 years from now back, Europeans and American professors were coming to this place, they were absolutely
flabbergasted
by the freedom of the debates. There, even now, though of course the freedom of debate and the freedom is because of war is narrowed. Even now, there are no forbidden subjects except for 3 or 4 or 5, including, of course, race. We could not, and if somebody becomes racist, then he would be punished. Yes, and of course, you should be polite towards the highest authority. However, Russia is a country where people long for higher authority, so it is easy for us to bullshit.
What has a president of Russia, a leader of Russia, what has he to fulfill? What is the most important thing that he has to do in order to be considered legitimate, in order to stay on power?
He has to be strong. That's it.
But he cannot, I mean, I talked to many Russians now in this week, and one former diplomat, he told me, well, Putin, of course, he can overrule the parliament, they cannot stop him, but his decisions have to be extremely intelligent in the sense that if he creates opposition, for example, if a majority of the people would not understand what he does, or powerful people, there would be, all of a sudden, you would have a revolution in Russia.
The main of the strength of President Putin is that he is Russian, and he has a gut feeling of what Russian people want. And Russians, most Russians, of course, I mean, we are all different. And that is why he is so popular, not only, and also he is strong, and also he has helped to resurrect Russia when it was in its abysmal collapse of 1999. We were in 1999 in the worst position in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. And he has this gut feeling, and he understands the people, and people understand him. However, of course, we make mistakes, and I openly challenge the president, whom I deeply respect, on some of his policies, including the fact that he and we are still unwilling to create and to push forward official ideology of the Russian elite, a Russian idea. I know what it is, but a lot of people are still hesitant, including probably even the president. But we even had a debate on that on television.
And what's the role of the rule of law in Russia? Is the law stronger than the president, or can the president change the law if he wishes to?
No, I mean, of course, president is a lawyer, and he tries to do as much to be as close to the law as possible. But in Russian mentality, the truth is beyond the law. So we are very different in this thing from Europeans.
And the idea of individual rights, for example, that you just cannot arrest people or take their property away. What's the importance of this in the West? Extremely, cherished, even praised idea of human rights.
Let's put it so way. In Russia, there are of course different people, but and I think it is right, and we, as all other nations in the world, except for a tiny bit group of nations in Europe, or group of elites in Europe, believe that communal rights or common rights or society rights are higher than rights of individual. And I, for myself, I say that the human is born by the Almighty and his parents to serve his family, his society, his country, God, and the world, not himself.
So there is a more collective understanding of human rights than a purely individualistic
but it is everywhere, and actually, by the way, even before the age of Enlightenment, even in Europe, collective rights and or rights of the supreme leader were above rights of individuals. Europe has developed a unique culture, which is, I would say, in the end, human, because humans could not survive alone.
What is President Putin's standing in Russian history, or to phrase it differently, what does President Putin stand for in the huge, in the vast spectrum of Russian history? What does he represent in your eyes?
He's a strong patriot and reformer. I think he could be, if we take Russian history, I think the closest parallels would be Peter the Great, if, and I've been telling that our president directly, if he lays the foundation for the third capital in Siberia, to Catherine the Great, who was the greatest reformer of the state, and of Alexander III, a very conservative Russian Tsar, who at the same time provided for stability, which laid the foundation for the fantastic growth of Russia in the late 19th, early 20th century.
What would you say is the national idea of Russia? What is the core of its identity when you say Russia? For example, in Switzerland, we would say the core idea of Switzerland is like direct democracy, it's the sovereignty of the citizen, that it's everybody, we all can decide upon our own fate. We don't want to have a strong government, we want to be independent. Our constitution probably, what is it for Russia? What is the, I mean, you have such a big country, so many people. What is the unifying idea behind it?
First it is defense, security. Second, it is cultural and religious openness. Third, it is the belief that we are a God-chosen country to save the world. Enough? Sorry.
God's chosen country. The I mean, Russia is a plurality of people. I had the impression that one probably could say that Russia is in some respects the opposite of the United States of America. The United States are a melting pot. If people from different countries come there, they give up their national identity to be American. In Russia, it's the opposite. You have so many different peoples somehow coexisting on this way.
That is indeed a unique way of building an empire. While Russians, whatever they were expanding because for needs of security or resources, they were not subjecting, but rather than suppressing, but rather than embracing other nations. So Russia is absolutely, by definition, a multicultural country.
And what can the world learn from the Russian experiences of multiculturalism? I mean, this is a huge issue in Europe because of migration. Well, what can we learn from Russia?
Just respect, and do not try to make everybody alike. I mean, we respect a Muslim, we respect a Buddhist. There is no question about that. There is no racism. Of course, there are racists here, but there is no racism. Absolutely. I mean, and that's why, for example, when we travel over the world, and when the people from Africa or Asia come, they feel themselves much at home here, because we are basically European. But there is no arrogance. And in a way, we've suffered for them, because in Soviet Union, the metropolis of Russia was feeding its provinces. Now it is, it has stopped more or less. But that is the way of we developed, and that is an absolute. We are an absolutely unique way, and you could not explain Russia. Except for the fact that it is governed directly by the Almighty, as one German, great Russian of German origins once said.
And why is Russia not falling apart? Why do all these different nations you have not say, well, it was probably good for a period of time to join this huge build up this huge state? Why don't we could be independent?
Well, they tried. I mean, some of them, because of the weakness of Moscow in there, and because of the collapse of the idea of communism in the 70s and 80s, so they tried. Now all of these nations are in desperate station, and now they understand. Some of them are coming back. Some of them are collapsing, like Ukraine or like. Many others, Armenia, but some of them will rejoin, some of them will stay apart, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What would you suggest Europe? I mean, there is a lot of stress now regarding migration. From a Russian point of view, probably you would say, well, accept this migration, treat those migrants respectfully, or would you say, be careful, you have too much fast influx of foreigners?
Well, first of all, I do not advise Europe. I mean, create a police state first before bringing in migrants. A strong police state. And remember that migrants were brought to Europe en masse, not because, of humanistic needs, but because European bourgeoisie in the 50s and the 60s wanted to scale down wages and to destroy trade unions. And now, if you want to have migration, then build a strong police state or succumb.
A police state or
a police state.
I mean the strong law and order.
Yes, law and order. Yeah, or succumb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we have to.
No, two very quick questions. Yeah. Is Russia a threat to the West?
Russia is a threat to the Western elites, modern Western elites, who stopped to be European and stopped to be human.
And one very last question, Professor Karaganow. What is the world we are entering now? Give us some points to hold on.
If we survive without a big war, and I hope that we shall do that, I'm envying the people who would live in that world. It will be multicultural, multinational, multicultural, multi-language, and it will be it would be a great world.
And Russia and Europe and America, they will be friends again?
Like cuisine in Moscow or New York.
And
everything.
And the United States and Europe and Russia will be friends again in this world?
No, not necessarily, but we will find a new balance, of course, 20 years from now, and we are building this balance now.
Thank you very much, Professor Karaganow, for this conversation. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I have to run, but nevertheless, it was a good